Hello there, it's Mr. Chime from weeklyburger.com. Last week we talked about how to get your first apartment. Today there are some things I want to talk to you about before you proceed on what we talked about last week, and that is choosing your first apartment. Why is this very important? Well, this is important because it determines whether you're going to have peace as a young working class adult or whether you're going to have chaos until your lease expires. You see, when choosing an apartment, it's always very important to make sure that you get an apartment where you, as a young working class adult, you're not going to experience a lot of strife living there. That at the end of the day, after work, you come back home and you're relaxing without your neighbors disturbing you. That you're not going to come out of your apartment to go to work and your car is vandalized. These are very, very important, especially when it's your first time choosing an apartment. You want to go to a place that actually suits your need, a place that is not going to add additional stress to your life. And that's what I'm about to tell you today. The right decisions that you have to make or consider when you're choosing an apartment. What are they? First of all, you have to consider the security, because this is of utmost importance due to the fact that people have actually gotten robbed in their apartment. Cars have been vandalized before. I'm talking from experience, where I parked my car and I come out and a lot of things were missing from the car. The windshield was broken and all that. Well, from my experience, I'm telling you that if you're gonna get your first apartment, no matter how cheap the apartment is, try to find a neighborhood that does not really have a history of violence. It does not have a history of car vandalizing, right? And you can easily take a walk at night in the neighborhood without somebody jumping on you. This is very, very important to your well-being, because the last thing you want is you moved into your apartment, right? And every now and then you have all these troubles where you can't even go to the grocery store to get something at night, because chances are something bad is going to happen to you. Now, I'm not saying all these things to scare you. I'm just telling you the reality of life as a young working class adult, that when you are deciding to get your first apartment and you end up in the side of town that is not secure, you are going to run into these problems. Now, when choosing your apartment, I would like you to consider the distance to your workplace. I know that last week when I talked about how to get your first apartment, I emphasized on affordability. Yes, it's also good that you are paying cheap rent, but at the same time, you want to make sure that the place that you got for your apartment is not very far away from your workplace, right? What I usually say is I say keep it at most 15 minutes, especially if you're someone who works and your shift is, morning shift. I don't know about your city, but in my city, once it's 7 a.m. on most highways, there's traffic jam. Now, let's your shift is starting around 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. Chances are you're going to run into these traffic jams. That's going to delay you going to work, right? Now, imagine that if you are transporting yourself from a far distance to your workplace on a highway, and imagine if there's a traffic jam on that, that's additional time you have to waste getting to work. So if you want to move into a new apartment, just choose an apartment that is closer to work. It doesn't really have to be in the same block as your workplace. Just make sure you keep it within 15 minutes drive. So that way you're not going to experience the difficulty of getting to work in the morning when everybody else is getting to work. Because you know what that causes, right? Traffic jam. That's right. It causes traffic jam. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is on last week when I talked about getting your first apartment. I don't know if you watched that video. I recommend you go watch it, right? We talked about touring the apartment, right? and I was very, I laid emphasis on trying to rent an apartment that you have not seen before. And you know why I did that? Because I've gotten screwed over before. Looking up an apartment online and paying everything only to go and see that it was a piece of trash. Oh yes. Now, apartments are trying to fill up the apartment units. They are not responsible for telling you the truth. I know. Hear me out. It is true that honest human nature demands that we are all honest to one another, but some business deals, especially the rental business, sometimes they're not really honest. Let me tell you a story. I don't know if I mentioned this on the first video, how to get apartment for the first time. I told you that I went touring, right, at this apartment, and immediately I opened the door. I saw a roach dead on the corner of my eyes lying there. And then the person that was giving me the tour thought that I didn't see the roach, so he kicked it. And I kid you not, he kicked the dead roach under the sofa that was in the apartment that they usually show people that are interested in renting. And I was like, wow. I said to myself, if this guy could kick the roach under the sofa so I couldn't catch the sight of that, not telling what else, he's lying. Why am I telling you this story? When you tour that apartment, I want you to look for some certain things, right? I want you to take into account how clean the apartment complex is. I'm not even talking about the apartment unit itself. I'm talking about the apartment complex. Look around, see if you can find dog shit. If you can find dog shit in the lawn or you can smell it, that means that apartment is going to have, and I know this is coming from me as a bias, but it's often true. The apartment is going to have insect infestation issue. I have realized over since my adulthood of renting apartments, since I turned 18 and started renting apartments, that whenever I tour an apartment where there's dog poop lying everywhere, and I rent the apartment, chances are the apartment, and it's a very high chance that the apartment itself is going to be pest infested. Oh yeah. Now, here's one thing that I need to tell you. Not only will the apartment be pest infested, they're going to have a lot of stray dogs walking around. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want, stray dogs walking around when I come out. Because I know they say dogs are beautiful. I love dogs, don't get me wrong, but no telling. We have all heard stories or seen on the news of dogs attacking people and ripping their face off, right? So you don't want to increase that chance of that happening to you. So when you tour these apartments, I want you to start looking around, look for dog poop lying everywhere, because that will tell you that the apartment complex is not taking care of the place. Also look for overgrown lawn. If they're not taking care of their lawn, that means the apartment is not really putting much effort into the maintenance of the apartment space. And now when you finally go into the apartment unit, there's something else that I want you to do. I mentioned that on the first video that I made. Once you go in there, right, you see the edges of the carpet. I want you to go over there and I want you to lift it up and I want you to check for bed bugs. My friend, listen, I kid you not. The last thing you want as a young working class adult is for you to get an apartment and you're fighting bed bugs every day. Because remember, once you get bed bugs, it's very, very hard to get rid of. You get bed bug, that's it. They get into your furniture, they get into your beds, they get into every facet of your living space. And the only thing you could do is just take those things and burn them, because there's no way you could get rid of it. So to avoid this issue, when you are touring your apartment, check the corners of those carpets, lift them up to make sure that there are no signs of insect droppings, especially bed bugs. If you don't know what a bed bug look like, I suggest that you go Google what a bed bug look like. Because these things are terrible pests. Once they get into your apartment complex, or once you move in there with them, you carry them everywhere you go. for you to get rid of them, you actually have to like destroy everything you have and start all over again. I kid you not. This is true about bed bugs, right? And the worst part of it is you can't kill them with insecticides, right? So make sure that you're checking these apartments before you move in. I also want you to, as you're touring the apartment, check the restroom to see if the restrooms are well taken care of. I know they're gonna show you the model apartment, and from that model apartment that you're being shown, I want you to make your own conclusion about how well the place is taken care of. If it's possible, we want you to ask the apartment complex or the leasing office to take you to the apartment that you're renting itself, like the unit itself that you're trying to rent. And the good thing about that is for you to see it for yourself and see that if it has everything that you need, because it's very important that you're checking all these things to make sure that it meets your personal needs. And what do I mean by personal needs? That you're not going to move into the apartment and everything else is going to be a liability from the day one that you moved in. Because this is what some of these bad apartments do. Once you move in there, and if there's pest infestation, they're just going to keep managing it. They will never, ever get rid of that pest issue, right? They will just keep managing it. They will tell you, hey, okay, we're going to send pest control people to come take care of it. The pest control people will always come, do their job, and for some odd reasons, the pest issue is worse than it was before you call in, before they called in the pest control people. And you have to deal with this throughout the duration of your lease. So be sure that you're touring all these places. You're checking the sink. You're making sure that the sink is running, and if it's possible, if you see your neighbor or your so-called potential neighbor, talk to them about their experience with the apartment. I've done that before. I have gone around the apartment asking people what their experience with the apartment complex was like. And actually, there was a pest-infested apartment unit that I didn't rent because someone came and be like, hey, dude, please do not rent here. The apartment complex is very terrible. Their maintenance time takes a long time. If you put in a maintenance request, it takes a very long time for them to come back and fix the issue. And this person was also telling me that how he has been battling roaches upon roaches, that he will be sleeping and roaches will be crawling all over his body. I kid you not, I know. It's very hard to just imagine it, but these are the real life experiences of young working class adults that do not do their research before they jump into getting an apartment. And this is why I say before you choose that apartment, make sure you dot your I's and T's, because if not, you're getting yourself a liability, right? You're gonna have to deal with it throughout the duration of the lease, and that's not what I want you to do. So again, if you're choosing an apartment, this is one thing I want you to consider. Consider the neighborhood where the apartment is. Consider the security of the neighborhood and the security of the apartment complex. Make sure that once you park your car, it's not going to be vandalized. Make sure that if Amazon is delivering packages to the apartment residents, your packages are not being stolen, because that happens a lot. You'll be surprised at the amount of thieves out there that are going after Amazon packages. It's a real thing. So you're checking that, you're making sure that that's not happening. Also, you don't have crazy neighbors, and you're checking the cleanliness of the apartment complex itself, right? And you're checking the cleanliness of the apartment unit itself. And you're making sure the management company, the apartment management company, that's the leasing office, they respond to maintenance requests on time, right? And they, when you have an issue, they are gonna actually come in and fix it within 24 hours. Here's why I'm telling you this. So I once rented an apartment, right, where during the summer, the AC went out, and I don't know, but in Texas, temperature could get as high as 105 degrees Fahrenheit. I kid you not, and that is hot as hell. So in a situation like that where the AC goes out, you could feel the heat within 10 minutes. Like it's gonna just settle, it's gonna be stuffy, humid, and very uncomfortable, right? And I've had an apartment that I rented accidentally because I didn't do my due diligence on that, where maintenance request takes a few days. And in this particular apartment, when I had that issue where the AC went out and the apartment was hot, I say it was so hot I couldn't stay there. I had to go get a hotel, right? It took about a day and some hours for them to come fix it. They only came in and then installed this big fan, like the fan is gonna somehow cool the apartment, which didn't even do anything. And they didn't work on that till the next day. And I was pissed off as hell. Why? Because the apartment complex didn't do what they were supposed to do, even though I'm paying them rent. So this is what I want you to make sure that you're looking you're looking at, or you're considering when you're choosing an apartment, that you're making sure that the apartment that you're trying to get, the maintenance request, once you put it in, they're gonna come in immediately and fix it. Especially if it's emergency maintenance request, you're just gonna come in and then fix it. And they actually care about the residents, and they keep the apartment complex clean, and they make sure that the place is secure, right? My current apartment right now, I will tell you a story. 2 years ago, it's a very secure apartment, don't get me wrong. Well, 2 years ago, we used to have this issue where people will break into the mailbox and they will literally rip off the mail doors from the mailboxes, and all the mails will be gone. So at first, they installed cameras and they thought that was gonna deter the people doing that, but it didn't. So like 2 years ago, Christmas, I didn't even get the thing I ordered for Christmas because it was stuff in the mailbox and someone took it. Yeah, so everybody was complaining. They installed the camera didn't work, and then they installed the gate, and the gate didn't actually work. So everybody was like, okay, well, this is not working. Why don't you just put some barbed wires and install the gate all the way up to meet the ceiling, so there's no way anybody could get in, and make it sure that it's electronics in such a way that once it's a certain time of the day, the whole place locks down. And that's what they did. And since then, we have not had that issue. And that shows me that this place cares. Now, there are some apartment complexes that when this issue happens, they wouldn't put any effort in tackling the issue. They won't put any effort in tackling the problem because they don't care as much. So make sure that when you're choosing an apartment, you are choosing an apartment that has a history of caring for its residents, so that if you ever experience, or if the residents ever experience this kind of issue, the apartment will step up to do their jobs, because you are actually paying them to keep that place secure for you, right? That's all I've got to say today. I remain yours faithfully, Mr. Chime. Be sure that when you're choosing your first apartment, that you're making all the right choices, that you're considering everything that will work out on your favor, and you're being very selfish about it, because remember, you're going to be signing that lease for a year at least. And if you get a very bad apartment, you have to deal with it for 1 year, because breaking the lease is not going to work, since it destroys your credit score, at least here in the States, right? So make sure that you are doing all these things that I mentioned here, and that's all I've got to say. Mr. Chime out.